What's going on, people? It's your boy Kelechi back with another episode of the Ramblin' Mind Podcast. How are each and every single one of y'all doing today? I hope y'all are staying safe. I hope y'all are taking care of yourselves. I hope y'all are doing all the things you know you ought to do during these times, my friends. This podcast is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a continuation of that last podcast episode, which was the webinar that I did on everything you need to know about money. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, go check that one out. In that last episode, in the webinar that I did, I hosted people where we talked about just questions that people had when it comes to money, when it comes to finances. We started off just talking about the basics of finances, like the things that you do when you get started in trying to handle your finances, which is tracking your money and seeing where it goes. And I gave some useful tools and tips on how to go about doing that. In this episode, or in this part of the webinar, we went through how to save and how to invest. And then I also provided tools. I also provided some examples of what you can invest in to get you started. I also shared how to go about learning how to save, things that you can put in place in order for you to start saving as soon as possible. So that's what this episode is going to be about. However, before we get into this episode, I wanted to share something with everybody because of the climate that we're currently in. There's a quote that just popped in my head from a guy named Morgan Housel. As you guys know, that's my favorite author, that has been popping into my head throughout this week because of some of the things that have been happening in the economy recently. And by that, I'm really talking about all the bank runs that we've been seeing recently. I'm talking about Silicon Valley Bank failing, Signature Bank being closed, the FDIC having to step in and provide liquidity for so many people, Credit Suisse, another bank in the EU, failing. All of these different things happening in the economy right now. And I just wanted to share a little bit of thought on that. And I'll share this quote with y'all in a second. But if you don't know what's going on or what happened, so there was a bank in California called Silicon Valley Bank. It was the 16th largest bank in the United States. And about 2 weeks ago, the bank had some issues with actually giving people the money that they needed. And basically what happened was they had messed up the way that they handled the finances of the bank. So another backstory to help you better understand this. So in the United States, we run on something called a fractional banking system, which is for every money that you put into the bank doesn't keep all of your money. So for example, I believe in the United States, most banks are required to keep, 15% of the money that you put into the bank. So for every $1 that you deposit into your checking or savings account, actually not your checking account, your savings account, for every $1 you put in your savings account, 15 cents is kept in the bank, and then the remaining 85 cents is taken out of the bank and used for other purposes. This is how we're able to buy homes with mortgages. This is how we're able to get student loans. This is how we're able to get car loans. This is how we're able to get all the different types of loans that we need in order for the economy to keep growing. This is how that money comes about. It's not just free money. They're basically banking on our trust in the bank system and the belief that not everybody is going to need their money all at the same time. So what banks do is they take your deposits, they keep about 15% in the bank's balance sheet, and then the remaining 85%, they loan it out. They loan it out in a variety of ways. Some of the ways they loan it out is by buying mortgage-backed securities, which is backed by the government, or just buying government bonds. And so they'll loan the money. Basically, they're loaning the money out to the government, but there's different terms for different bonds. So you have some 3-month bonds, you have some 2-year bonds, you have some 10-year bonds, and you have some 15-year bonds and 30-year bonds. You have different year periods for different terms of bonds. There's all kinds of bonds that you can get out there. So what happened with Silicon Valley Bank is they took most of their money and they did 30-year bonds, which is a really long time. Now, it doesn't mean that the money is gone. All it is they're loaning the money to the government, and then after 30 years, automatically that money will be given back to Silicon Valley Bank. So the money is not gone, but what happened was when the Fed started increasing interest rates, what happens was with bonds, when you increase interest rates, when the interest rates goes up, the bond price goes down. It's an inverse relationship. When interest rates go up, bonds price go down. So what happened was the bonds that Silicon Valley Bank bought with the deposits of the people who used the bank went down. So when people started saying, hey, I need some of my money, Silicon Valley Bank was like, ooh, we don't have all that money to be able to give to everybody right now. So we're going to have to either issue more shares or do some other things. And when people heard about Silicon Valley Bank doing this, it spooked a whole lot of people, and people freaked out, and people were like, yo, I need to get my money today, which is something we like to call a bank run, when everybody tries to get their money at the same time. And so when everybody tried to do it, I think it was about $42 billion that everybody tried to get out at the same time. There is no bank except for super large banks that has $42 billion to give to people all at the same bank, which posed a huge problem for Silicon Valley Bank. And so that's what happened. And then the bank almost failed. And then the good news is we have something in the United States called FDIC insurance. So Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, I think. And what that does is the banks, every single bank in the United States has to pay a certain amount of insurance to ensure that they're insuring their owners' deposits, to protect the deposits that you put into the bank. So if anything happens to a bank, if they fail for any reason, your money is protected. It's protected up to $250,000. But however, the banking system has changed a little bit because what they did this last time, in order for no contagion to spread, they actually guaranteed every single person's deposit, even if you had more than $250,000 in a savings account. And so the bank stepped in on over the weekend, or 2 weeks ago over the weekend, basically took over the bank and then gave everybody back their money. And that's what was supposed to end the whole thing. However, and this is where I'm going with this. However, after that happened, if you're on Twitter or if you pay attention to the news or if you pay attention to a lot of stuff that's going on, you will notice that there's been a lot of doomsday sayers coming out of the woodwork to basically yell and scream like, oh my God, look at this. The US financial system is terrible. So many different people are just coming out of nowhere and shouting about how things are the worst they've ever been, how things will be terrible and all this stuff. And usually when they come out and say that, they usually are the same people who are like, yo, but I have the answer for you. This is what you need to do to protect yourself. They always are the ones that have the answers for you. And that reminded me of a quote by Morgan Housel, where he says, few things are as valuable in the modern world as a good BS detector. Few things are as valuable in the modern world as a good BS detector. The thing I'm trying to share with everybody is be on alert. With these recent economic upheavals, everybody's going to try to find a way to get into your pockets. There's going to be so many people that's going to show up and say, this is a problem, but I have the solution for you. There's going to be so many people that will imbue fear in you, but then at the same time speak wise and comforting words because for some reason, nobody else has the solution. Only they have the solution. Be very wise right now because there will be so many of these people that will want to act like they're your friends, but they're not your friends. These people are snakes. And what do you do with snakes when you see one? You crush their head. So if somebody shows up with an offer that is too good to be true, or trying to sell you some doomsday scenario where the only solution is what they have in their hands, ignore them, please. Please do not let this situation frighten you and scare you into doing something that you regret for the rest of your life. Please, please, please be careful what you're listening to right now. Stay on alert. Turn your BS detector all the way up. Because there's going to be so many people that's going to try and sell you so many different things. I can go ahead and tell you right now a few of the things they're going to try and sell you. Bitcoin, gold, and when it comes to your investing, they're going to talk about all these different other insurance products or stuff like that. You don't need that. We saw the system work as it's intended to work. This is not the first bank to fail. This is not going to be the last bank to fail. That's why we set up a system where the federal government can backstop the banking system. That's why, unlike Bitcoin, unlike cryptocurrency, this is actually protected money. There was not a single person who had deposits in Silicon Valley Bank that were not okay when the cloud cleared over on Monday morning. Every single person that needed their money got their money. There was not a single person that did not get their money, which means the system worked as designed. So if somebody's trying to sell you something else, trying to sell you some facade or some BS about, oh, the system is failing, please just show them out the door. Ignore them, silence them. Because what they're trying to do is prey on most people's ignorance about how our banking system works, about how money works in the United States. So please, if it sounds too good, if it sounds too sweet, if it's not boring enough, because this is what they do as well, is they play on the fact that a lot of the good things, a lot of the safe things are extremely boring. Ignore them, please. Ignore them. Usually the best answers for most of these things is boring. But most of us don't want to pay attention to that because it doesn't incite a good reaction from us. So please turn up your BS detector. Turn up your BS detector. Pay attention to what people are trying to get you to do. Pay attention to the incentives for those people. Like, ask them when they come up to you and they're telling you all this stuff. It's like, okay, what do you get out of this? What do you get out of this? Even me with this podcast. What do I get out of this? I get the opportunity to whisper in your ears because that builds an intimate relationship between you and I, and the possibility that I can maybe sell you ads in the future. I'm not going to lie. Like, I want this podcast to grow. I want to be able to make some dollars and cents out of this. I also get the good feeling of I'm sharing good information as well. So there is an incentive of why I create this podcast. It's not just like, oh yeah, it's just good. No, everybody has incentives. Pay attention to the incentives of all these people that are coming for you. But anyway, that's all I got for y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed the rest of this podcast where we talk through steps that you can take in order to learn how to save money and some of the ways to start investing money if you've never invested money before. The simple investing steps that you can take right now in order to start changing your life for the better. But anyway, I'm going to catch y'all up in the next one. Remember, generosity is always greater than greed. But God bless each and every single one of y'all, and I'm out. Peace. Whoosh.
The next part of this is invest and save the rest. I always have this question of what is the number one question that most people ask me whenever they find out, like, oh, I talk about personal finance and all this stuff. The number one question everybody asks me is like, what stock should I buy? Every time. Like, when they know I'm into finances, is always, what stock should I buy? Every time. That's the number one question everybody loves to talk to me about. But the thing is, like, that's not even the more important thing. The more important thing is talking about savings. Because in order for you to buy a stock, first you have to have the money to be able to buy the stock. And I love this quote from Morgan Housel. Morgan Housel says that savings is just the gap between your ego and your income. Another way of saying this is savings is just a diversion from boosting the appearance of your status today for more productive use tomorrow. That's all savings is. Your ability to live on less than you make will open gaps for you to have savings to do what you want to do. So there are two types of savings, and I'm rushing through this because time is kind of running out. There are two types of savings. There's survival savings, and then there's the enjoyment savings. I believe we do great at the enjoyment savings, but we suck at survival saving. Because enjoyment savings is tangible, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it's tangible. Survival savings just feels very ambiguous. So let's talk about survival savings. Survival savings, if you guys have ever heard of something called Murphy's Law, Murphy's Law states that what can go wrong will go wrong. And I love the way Carl Richards puts it. He says that, and basically what can go wrong will go wrong is just talking about risk of life. And Carl Richards puts it this way. He says, risk is what's left over after you've thought of everything. After you think you've thought of everything. So this picture is just wonderful. It's because the whole thing is we think like, oh, everything is going good. The problem is, just like we saw during the pandemic, ain't nobody saw the pandemic coming. Ain't nobody saw us being shut down for over a year because of a virus. We never know when those things will show up. This is where survival savings comes in. This is where us having something called an emergency fund comes in. Before you think of trying to invest, before you do anything else, this is the absolute foundation for your financial life. The absolute foundation for your financial life. And I usually advise that most people start with enough to cover your highest deductible. Now, what is a deductible? For any insurance you have, for most of us, it's probably going to be your car insurance. What is the minimum that you have to pay before your insurance kicks in? So for your health insurance and for car insurance, for those who owns your home insurance, which one of those has the highest amount of money that you need to have saved? And then your insurance will cover everything else. So for example, with me, I own this house. In order for my insurance to kick in to cover a lot of stuff, I have to put up about, I think, $3,000, $4,000 or something like that before insurance kicks in. For some of us, our health insurance, we have to put in like $1,000 before it starts to kick in. So what is the minimum amount? That's the starting off point for most people, for me. But if you're like, yo, I can't, like, yo, it's gonna be like $2,000. That's a long way. I say start off with like 1,000. Just start off with 1,000 and put it in a separate account where you just like learn the art of savings. You learn the art of savings, and then have 3 to 6 months eventually. Get to a point where you have 3 to 6 months of expenses. When I say expenses, again, we go back, again, I said it, everything is built off of your ability to track and make a plan. So when you track your expenses and you figure out, okay, for me to actually survive, I need at least $3,000 in my bank account. It means for me to, if I lose my job or whatever, I need at least $9,000 to $10,000 sitting in a savings account, regardless of what happens. That's what an emergency fund is. The general wisdom, like I said, is 3 to 6 months of your expenses. I currently do not have 6 months. Right now, I think that I'm okay with having just about a 3-month expense or 3-month emergency fund because I live for myself and nobody is dependent on my income, which means that if anything goes south, I can basically live on nothing and I'll be okay. The only thing that's a huge liability for me is the house that I own. Apart from that, I'll basically be all right. And so you have to figure out what your risk tendency is. For some of us, we want the smoke. We like the risk. So we want to live on the edge. But have something that in case random emergencies just pop up, you have money that you can pull from. And then the second type of savings is one we all love, which is your enjoyment savings. So that's things like your house down payment, Christmas fund, birthday funds, travel fund, car maintenance and fees, wedding, phone and laptop. These are all different types of savings that we all want and we regularly do. Actually, for most of us, we actually can do these ones because it's more exciting to think about I'm saving up for a new laptop or I'm saving up for a new iPhone than it is for us to think about, oh yeah, I need to save an emergency fund. These are fun. But regardless, this is how we save. The easiest way to save money is to not think about saving money, which is so antithetical to what we would think. We would think like if we wanted to save money, we would actually like have to put things into place. But really, in order to save money, all you need to do is automate the process. The less you think about it, the more you actually save. The less you think about it, the more you save. And so there are 2 ways that I usually advise people to do this. One is direct deposits. For most of us, we work for companies that allow you to have multiple direct deposits. Just set up multiple direct deposits, open new bank accounts where every time you get paid, you just remove a certain amount of money from your main check that goes directly to that savings account. That way you don't even have to think about it. And you get used to the idea of living on less. You get used to the idea of living on less. Second way you can do it is to just automate your process. Set up transfer rules in your main checking account that will allow you to send money into multiple other checking accounts. And as far as accounts that I recommend, these are the 4 that I stand by, that I love, and I actually use myself. So if you want to open up savings accounts, these are the 4 that I would use. But my number 1 savings account is Ally. I love Ally. By the way, after this, if I find out that any one of y'all 3 are using banks like Wells Fargo or Chase or Bank of America or any of these other big banks for your savings account, I will find you and I will destroy you. Like, do not use those banks. Do not use those banks. Those banks are not your friends. First of all, they don't pay you anything in interest. And then also, they just suck. They just really suck. They charge you all these kind of fees that just, for what? So please do not use those banks if you're trying to save an emergency fund or trying to save for any kind of expenditure. Also, cheat code when it comes to saving money, whatever account that you're opening up, most bank accounts allow you to do this now where you can give your bank account a nickname. Call it the name of the goal that you're trying to save for. So for example, in my Ally account, which is what I use for my emergency fund, I literally have on there emergency fund. Like, it's called emergency fund account. And because I have that name, it makes me think twice before I pull money out of there. When I was saving up for a house down payment, I had an account that was called house down payment. It made me think twice before I pulled money out of there. I have friends who have accounts that's children's birthday fund. It makes them think twice before they pull money out of their child's birthday fund. I have an account for Christmas. It makes me think twice. Things like that helps. It just gives us a moment to pause. Like I said earlier, systems are the things that enable us to reach the destinations that we want to get to. Building systems. So I just want to, moving on from savings, the next thing that I want to talk about, and this is the last thing we'll talk about before we get out of here, Would you rather, and this is, put it in the comments, would you rather have $1 million today? And you can answer this question in the comments. $1 million today, or a magic penny that doubles every day for 30 days? And yes, this is a trick question. Which would you rather have? $1 million today, or a magic penny that doubles every day for 30 days? I'm gonna give everybody like a few seconds. And then magic penny. 1 million today, okay. Cool. Well, the answer is you will go for that magic penny. Because the magic penny, after 30 days, will be worth $5.4 million or $5.3 million. $5.3 million, which doesn't make any sense. How can a penny double every day and get to that point of $5.3 million? The magic of this is called compounding. It's called compounding. And as much as like, and here's the key though, compounding is very important because it takes two things into factor, which is time. Time is like the most important factor when it comes to compounding. If I had said for 20 days, you would take that 1 million every day. But the magic happens right at 27 days, where on the 28th day, it becomes almost 1 point. Oh, somebody's joining. On the 28th day, where am I at? Yeah, 28th day, it becomes 1.3 million, and then it just keeps going from there. So when it comes to investing, which is what everybody talks about, everybody focuses so much on the fact that, oh, I can make my money become more money. The way you make your money grow is not by picking the best stocks or anything like that. It's just time. It's just time. It's simply time. I saw this chart of Warren Buffett, and I would think Warren Buffett is worth about $160 billion today. And I would have thought like, oh, he must have like made his monies when he was in his 30s or something like that. But when I saw the chart, Warren Buffett didn't become a billionaire until he was in his 60s, which is mind-blowing. And he has been investing since he was 18 years old. And he didn't become a billionaire until he was in his 60s. And then that's when he made his first billion. And then you can see just how crazy it is that he went from $1 billion to 160 so fast. Why? Compounded. And it doesn't compound early on, which for a lot of us who are young in here, we want the money today. We want to see the wins today. But when it comes to investing, it's more about patience more than anything else. I will just run through this real quick because we're running out of time. The most important things when it comes to investing is your time and your savings rate. The more money you can save today, the more you will have later. The more money you save today, the more you will have later. Remember, we talked about time is the most important asset when it comes to anything, when it comes to investing. Time and savings rate. And I just wanted to share this chart. If you meet anybody who's like, oh yeah, I'm the best stock picker ever, they're probably BSing you and they're lying, because if they are the best stock picker ever, why are they talking to you? They should be like Warren Buffett, like literally be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The average investor only gets about 2.9% every single year, which is worse than just investing in the S&P 500. I wish we had more time for me to dive into this, but don't worry about trying to pick stocks. Worry more about trying to save more money. Your focus is not on trying to pick stocks or trying to pick the next best investment. Your focus is on investing your money for as long as possible and increasing this. That's where our focus should be. I'll share this quote as well. Paul Samuelson, who's a billionaire and one of the greatest investors of all time, he said, investing should be more like watching paint dry or watching grass grow. If you want excitement, take $800 and go to Las Vegas. Anybody who tells you that they're excited about investing, they're lying to you. They're gambling. Most of them are not making money. Investing is extremely boring when you go down to the details, but that's a whole other thing, and I'll leave that because we don't have time. How to invest. How to invest. This is the last thing that I'll share. What do you want to invest in? You want to invest in index funds, usually something like the S&P 500 or target date index funds. Where do you want to invest? You want to invest in your 401k, your Roth IRA, HSA, 403b, or 457, depending on what your company offers. For most of us, for every single one of us, we all have access to a Roth IRA, so we should all have that opened up. There are rules attached to all of this, but these are the main ones that you should be investing in. Like I said, it's boring. It's the boring thing. It's not the most exciting thing when it comes to investing. Why do we use these accounts? Because one, taxes, and two, you suck at investing just as much as I suck at investing. So let's just be honest and remove all the extra. And then how? We automate it. Remember what we talked about earlier about we automate to save. The way we save and invest is automation. The less we have to think about it, the more you actually do it. And then you automate whatever amount you can afford to start doing and then increase that thing over time. As you pay off your debts, increase it. As you make more money, increase it. Remember, the two most important factors when it comes to investing is your savings rate and time. Savings rate and time. And so this is a slide where I was just going to share like the one that I did and the one that I believe is probably the best bet for most of us, especially when we get started, where you just want to get that thing working in your favor. It's called a target date index fund. And a target date index fund is one of the best things you can do because it allows you to not focus on investing so much. It allows you to actually focus on doing the more important thing, which is how do you increase your income? How do you increase your income so you can save more money? And so doing that, the target date index fund, this is just an example of some of the ones that are offered, whether it's with Vanguard, Fidelity, or Charles Schwab. These are the ones you want to use. These three are the companies that you want to go for. For most of us, I would advise doing the 2060 fund so that you can like use that for the longest time. So that's my advice for most people. Again, I'm just a random guy on the internet. Don't take everything I say as gospel. And then moving on from there, the last thing that's very important is once you get started, do not stop. Do not stop. Do not stop. If you missed the 10 best days in the market, just 10 of the best days in the market when you invested your money over a 10-year period, from 2000 to 2020, over a 20-year period, if you miss just the 10 best days, your investment returns go from $61,000 if you invested $10,000 to being 28. Do not stop. Do not stop. And then we'll finish out with a couple quotes that I love, is defining what is wealth. Somebody said this: wealth is created by suppressing what you could buy today in order to have more stuff or more options in the future. No matter how much you earn, you will never build wealth unless you can put a lid on how much fun you can have with your money right now, today. I always like to put this comment out here and ask people, but we don't have time to ask this question, but ask people, who do you think is richer? A man who earns $1 million but spends $1.1 million versus a man who earns $50,000 but spends only $40,000. Most people always say, oh, the guy who makes $1 million. Why? Because he looks more flashy. He has the bigger house. He drives the nicer cars. He has the nicer clothes. But he's spending $1.1 million every single year. He only makes $1 million, which means he's broke. But most of us don't see it that way. We see it as, oh, he's making $1 million. He must be rich. No. The guy who makes 50 but saves 10,000 because he only spends 40 is rich. He is rich. That's the rich dude. Again, going back to the first thing we talked about, living on less than you make, because when you live on less than you make, it opens doors for you in your finances. And I'll just talk about what true wealth looks like. For most of us, it's not the stuff that we buy. True wealth is us being able to control our time. And money's only value is in its ability to give us the freedom to do what we want, when we want, with who we want, and how we want. That's the value of money. And honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot for you to be able to get to this point. Because when we actually sit down to consider what are the things we actually love the most, we realize it's not about the money. I love this quote from my favorite writer, Morgan Housel. He says, less ego equals more wealth. Saving money is the gap between your ego and your income. And wealth is what you don't see. So wealth is created by suppressing what you could buy today in order to have more stuff or more options in the future. No matter how much you earn, you will never build wealth unless you can put a lid on how much fun you can have with your money right now, today. So I'll close this out by just asking everybody one question. What do you want? Until we can answer this question for ourselves, we will be stuck. So the question is, what do you want? What do you want? You have to sit down, take the time to figure out, what do I want? Not what Instagram is telling me I should want, not what my friends say I should want, not what my family says I should want, not what anybody else says I should want, but what do I want? And one day I tweeted this out one day, and it's basically, having mastery over your finances brings more freedom, more passion, and more control over your life. Unfortunately, we are told the opposite. We are told doing your budget and all this stuff is too scary, so run away from it. But the truth is, when you understand money and you understand your finances, the better you can actually use it for yourselves. So that's it for the presentation. I apologize. This actually went way longer. I wanted to give us a lot more time to ask questions, but if you guys have any questions real quick, I'm going to unmute everybody so you guys can unmute yourself and talk.